Every day begins with a ritual. Billions of people across the planet perform it without a second thought. A cup of strong coffee to wake up. A sweet donut or a granola bar to recharge. A bottle of cola at lunch to get a boost. This is the backdrop of our civilization, its taste and smell. We consider it normal, safe. But what if this backdrop is actually a loud, intrusive noise, drowning out the quiet voice of our own body? What if two of the world's most common substances, legal, socially approved, and even encouraged, are, in their biochemical essence, drugs? Official medicine and science have long had an answer to this question. An answer that is stubbornly ignored by society, overshadowed by the power of a multi-billion-dollar industry and our deep-seated reluctance to see the truth. The truth that sugar and caffeine are psychoactive substances that cause addiction. And the truth that we have crossed a Rubicon, consuming sugar in quantities our biology is simply not designed for. This is not just a problem of excess weight. This is a silent epidemic, rewiring our brains, our metabolisms, and our future. Scene 2. Caffeine, the legalized stimulant. Let's start with caffeine. For many, its stimulating effect is no secret. But few realize the sophistication of the mechanism activated inside our skulls each morning. Our brain is a complex network with its own internal system for tracking fatigue. A key player in this system is the neurotransmitter adenosine. Throughout the day, as energy is expended, adenosine levels rise. It binds to specific receptors like a key fitting a lock, signaling, "Stop. Time to rest." Fatigue is building up. We perceive this as drowsiness and poor concentration. Caffeine is a master of mimicry. Its molecular structure is so similar to adenosine that it can deceive the receptors. It occupies them like an uninvited guest, blocking the real adenosine from accessing its sites. The brain stops receiving fatigue signals. But the story doesn't end there. Blocking adenosine triggers a chain reaction. Other neurotransmitters, dopamine and glutamate, are released. Dopamine is the chemistry of anticipation, motivation, and pleasure. It's the very same neurotransmitter targeted by drugs like cocaine and amphetamines, albeit in a much cruder and more powerful way. Caffeine provides a gentle but noticeable dopamine push. Hence, that feeling of alertness, clarity, even mild euphoria after a shot of espresso. The brain remembers this pattern. Substance use equals improved state. This is the classic foundation for addiction. Now, consider tolerance and withdrawal. The brain is not stupid. Seeing its receptors constantly blocked, it produces more adenosine receptors. Now, to achieve the same level of alertness, you need a larger dose of caffeine. This is tolerance. And if you abruptly stop, all the adenosine that has built up during the day floods the newly created receptors. The result is a withdrawal syndrome, powerful headaches, irritability, brain fog, profound fatigue. Symptoms that can last for days. Official medical classifications, such as the DSM-5 used by psychiatrists, recognize caffeine intoxication and caffeine withdrawal as diagnosable disorders. This isn't just feeling unwell. It's a chemically driven withdrawal syndrome. Scene 3. Sugar, sweet deception of the dopamine system. If caffeine's story is relatively straightforward, sugar is the true wolf in sheep's clothing. Its impact is even more insidious because it masquerades as a natural need. After all, we are born with a preference for sweet taste. It's an evolutionary mechanism. In nature, sweetness signaled a safe, energy-rich food source like ripe fruit. But nature did not prepare us for the pure, concentrated sugar we've learned to produce on an industrial scale. When we consume sugar, something remarkably similar to the reaction caused by addictive drugs happens in our brains. The primary target is that same dopamine reward system. Under normal circumstances, dopamine is released for vital activities: eating, social interaction, success. It says, "Remember, this is good for survival, repeat this." Sugar triggers such a powerful and rapid release of dopamine that the reward system becomes overloaded. The brain records, "This isn't just food. This is something exceptional." A conditioned reflex is formed. But here, a fundamental law of neurophysiology kicks in. In response to constant stimulation, the brain defends itself. To maintain balance, it downregulates dopamine receptors, reducing their sensitivity. Now, to experience the same level of pleasure, you need more sugar. This is tolerance. Meanwhile, ordinary, healthy food, vegetables, meat, grains, begins to seem bland and uninteresting. It simply can't compete with the sugar bomb. Laboratory research on animals is telling. Rats given unlimited access to a sugar solution display all the classic signs of addiction. They prefer sugar to normal food, they develop tolerance, and when sugar is removed, they show withdrawal symptoms, anxiety, tremors, even aggression. Brain scans revealed changes in their dopamine and opioid receptors strikingly similar to those seen in cocaine or heroin addiction. Of course, a human is not a rat. But the fundamental neurochemical pathways in mammals are profoundly similar. Sugar withdrawal is not a myth. Headaches, fatigue, brain fog, sharp mood swings, intense cravings. These are all symptoms of a brain struggling to adapt to the absence of a powerful stimulant. Scene 4. The epidemic of sugar overconsumption, the numbers. Why does society continue to ignore these facts? The answer lies in economics and sociology. We are dealing with a perfectly tuned system. The food industry is a multi-billion-dollar business whose profits depend directly on sales volume. And what sells best? Products that create mild dependency. A vicious cycle is created. The manufacturer adds sugar and caffeine to products' right-pointing arrow. The consumer buys them more often. Right-pointing arrow sales grow. Right-pointing arrow. The manufacturer invests in marketing to convince us of the harmlessness and necessity of these products. The marketing is subtle. It links coffee with productivity, success, and comfort. Sugar with joy, celebration, and love. I'm sorry, here's a chocolate bar. These substances are woven into social rituals. The coffee break, the birthday cake, the coffee shop date. Giving them up means not just losing a chemical stimulant, but potentially dropping out of a social circle. Furthermore, a strategy of doubt is at work. Just as tobacco companies funded research for decades to question the link between smoking and cancer, today food giants sponsor studies that attempt to downplay sugar's role in the obesity epidemic, shifting blame to total calories or lack of exercise. An informational noise is created, making it difficult for the average consumer to discern the truth. Governments, in turn, find themselves in a dual role. On one hand, they face soaring healthcare costs due to diet-related illnesses. On the other, the food industry provides jobs, pays taxes, and wields powerful lobbying influence. Therefore, decisive measures, such as prominent warning labels on packaging, special taxes on sugary drinks, or strict advertising restrictions aimed at children, meet fierce resistance. Scene 5. The system that breeds addiction. Why does society continue to ignore these facts? The answer lies in economics and sociology. We are dealing with a perfectly tuned system. The food industry is a multi-billion-dollar business whose profits depend directly on sales volume. And what sells best? Products that create mild dependency. A vicious cycle is created. The manufacturer adds sugar and caffeine to products right-pointing arrow. The consumer buys them more often. Right-pointing arrow sales grow. Right-pointing arrow. The manufacturer invests in marketing to convince us of the harmlessness and necessity of these products. The marketing is subtle. It links coffee with productivity, success, and comfort. Sugar with joy, celebration, and love. I'm sorry, here's a chocolate bar. These substances are woven into social rituals. The coffee break, the birthday cake, the coffee shop date. Giving them up means not just losing a chemical stimulant, but potentially dropping out of a social circle. Furthermore, a strategy of doubt is at work. Just as tobacco companies funded research for decades to question the link between smoking and cancer, today food giants sponsor studies that attempt to downplay sugar's role in the obesity epidemic, shifting blame to total calories or lack of exercise. An informational noise is created, making it difficult for the average consumer to discern the truth. Governments, in turn, find themselves in a dual role. On one hand, they face soaring healthcare costs due to diet-related illnesses. On the other, the food industry provides jobs, pays taxes, and wields powerful lobbying influence. Therefore, decisive measures, such as prominent warning labels on packaging, special taxes on sugary drinks, or strict advertising restrictions aimed at children, meet fierce resistance. Scene 6. What can be done? Mindfulness over asceticism. Realizing the scale of the problem can induce a sense of hopelessness. We are just cogs in a vast machine. But there is a way out, and it begins with personal mindfulness. This is not about total asceticism and complete denial. It's about reclaiming control. The first and most crucial step is knowledge. Start reading ingredient lists. Sugar hides under dozens of names: sucrose, glucose, fructose, maltose, molasses, corn syrup, fruit juice concentrate, and so on. Simply becoming aware of how much invisible sugar you consume is half the battle. Second, reorient towards whole, unprocessed foods. Vegetables, fruits, where sugar is bundled with fiber, slowing its absorption, whole grains, legumes, quality proteins and fats. Such food doesn't cause sharp blood sugar spikes and dopamine storms. It satiates and provides long-lasting energy. Third, change your relationship with caffeine. View it not as a mandatory morning ritual, but as a tool to be used consciously. Drink water first thing in the morning. Prioritize sleep to reduce dependence on the stimulant. Allow yourself quality coffee in moderation, rather than gulping down liters of an instant surrogate. On a societal level, we must demand transparency from authorities. Clear labeling, restrictions on advertising to children, educational programs in schools. We need to talk about this openly, removing the stigma from the topic of food addiction. It is not a character flaw, it is a biochemical reality. Scene 7. Conclusion. Sugar and caffeine have become an integral part of our life's landscape. They are legal, accessible, and socially acceptable. But their chemical nature remains unchanged. Acknowledging this is not about succumbing to paranoia. It is about taking the first step to stop being a puppet of your own biochemistry and the manipulations of giant corporations. We are not calling for a war on coffee or cake. We are calling for a truce. For a peace based on knowledge, not ignorance. Knowledge that true energy and true joy do not come from a soda can or a cup of stimulant, but from a balanced life, adequate sleep, wholesome food, and activities that bring genuine fulfillment. Perhaps it's time to rewrite our daily rituals. Not to make life duller, but to restore its authentic flavor. A flavor not dulled by constant chemical stimulation. The taste of reality. Conscious, clear-headed, and truly sweet, not because of sugar, but because we have finally begun to control what is within our power to control. If you know someone who would find this perspective valuable, please share this video with them. And to make sure you don't miss what's next, subscribe and join me for the upcoming videos.